How's it going, everyone? It's Harvey from Weather Sponge 5000, and in this video, we're going to focus on the next few snowstorms moving through the United States. We have this Midwest snowstorm that's going to bring significant snowfall to many of the more populated areas of the Midwest, and after this snowstorm, there could be the possibility of a major northeast snowstorm that could impact the coastal northeast cities and it could be the first snowstorm to impact the coastal northeast cities in over 2 years, because of course with last snowstorm we saw in the northeast, it was primarily a rain event for the entirety of the Interstate 95 corridor cities, with the exception of Boston. But this snowstorm could be the one that could bring major snowfall right up along the coast. So first, let's take a look and really forecast what's going to happen with this storm system as it approaches the northeast. So as you can see, there's going to be a trough that's going to come off the Pacific Northwest coast. There's going to be a decent amount of cold air behind it, which is definitely going to help enhance the instability right around the middle of the country for this storm to rapidly intensify. And the GFS model expects that there's going to be enough instability in the Midwest for the area of snowfall to increase, the overall area of convective activity to increase, and that will eventually move up the northeast coast thanks to a ridge that's located just to the east of this storm system. And in a scenario like this, we see very heavy snowfall right over Washington, D.C. Baltimore is getting involved, Philadelphia as well, and New York City, as this would happen right around the Tuesday morning time frame for a lot of these cities, as I'll say the worst of the impacts will occur for the Northeast anywhere between Monday night through Tuesday evening. So you definitely need to be aware of that as we approach next week, where we could definitely see very heavy snowfall. Snowfall rates anywhere between 1 to 2 inches per hour is certainly possible if this scenario were to come for fruition, but that still has yet to be seen, because if we were to take a look at the European model, on the flip side, the European model isn't very confident that we're going to see a snowstorm in the Northeast really at all, because based on the latest run of the European model doesn't expect as much instability to exist over the midsection of the country for this storm system to intensify fast enough for a large area of convective activity to exist as it moves to the northeast. So in a scenario like this, we see no snow at all for pretty much anywhere in the northeast. The storm system is moving a little bit too far to the east to really bring any sort of impacts to the northeast coast. So we get nothing out of this storm in this scenario. So the key thing we're going to need to take a look at is how the jet stream will dip by the time we approach early next week, because the more noticeable the dip is, that would require the ridging just to the east of this low to be stronger, which would force the winds to move from more of a southwesterly direction rather than just a straight westerly direction, which means that that'll force a storm up the northeast coast that would bring the major snow to the northeast cities. But and let me show you guys a 500 millibar height anomaly to show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. You're going to clearly see that in the European model scenario. The European model doesn't expect the ridging to be as strong, so we don't see the cold air move as far south, and we don't necessarily see the storm move up the northeast coast, and rather move straight out to sea, which definitely forces a precipitation to not move over the northeast. So how strong this ridge is will be key in determining whether or not we're going to see a major snowstorm in the northeast. I'll certainly keep you guys updated over the next several days. We have a pretty strong difference between the two most reliable computer models, which is why I say the forecast, even though it's around 5 days out, it's definitely in a scenario like this, it would definitely be more certain than a snowstorm that's let's say 7 to 8 days out. But since the two most reliable computer models have such polar opinions regarding the trajectory of this storm system, then it's really hard to identify what you'll see when it comes to impacts when we're still seeing a strong disagreement between the two most reliable computer models. So I'll keep you guys updated if we see a better agreement. But if this snowstorm were to come for fruition for the Northeast, then that would certainly bring probably around 6 to 10 inches of snowfall right over New York City, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. And like I said, it would happen anywhere between the Monday to the Tuesday timeframe of early next week. So you definitely need to be prepared for that scenario. So definitely stay tuned. I'll certainly keep you guys updated once the computer models get a better idea of this forecast. Next, let's move on to something that's a little bit more in the short-term future, which is this Midwest snowstorm. If we were to move forward with forecasts, we already have the low pressure system located right over the Midwest. There is enough cold air that's now just beginning to interact with this very warm and moist environment over the Southeast. So it's only a matter of time before we see the area of convective activity expand exponentially, and that will lead to our next major snowstorm in the Midwest. We see plenty of instability, and the snowfall should begin right around the early Friday timeframe for northern Missouri, northern Kansas. The snowfall should begin right around the early Friday timeframe, and same goes for Nebraska. These areas, that's where you should expect maybe moderate snowfall in Kansas and Nebraska, but I do expect the snowfall to be a little bit heavier right over Missouri as well as southern Iowa, and this snowfall should extend into northern Illinois by the morning time on Friday, going into the noon time on Friday. That's when you should begin to see some snowfall right around Chicago, northern Illinois, and southern Wisconsin. So definitely be aware of that. And the snowfall rates could be anywhere between 1 to 2 inches per hour. So that's certainly capable of bringing a heavy amount of snowfall in a very short period of time. And continuing to move forward with the forecast, we could begin to see a rain intrusion enter Chicago right around the Friday afternoon time frame once the storm system continues ahead a little bit further northward, and we see a little bit more of a stronger southerly flow right over Chicago. So that might help wash away some of the snowfall accumulation in northern Illinois and portions of Illinois as well as Chicago as we approach a Friday afternoon time frame. Well, it's only a matter of time before you guys will return to entirely a snow event, because the wind direction will shift from more of a northeasterly direction, and of course when we see strong winds coming from a northerly direction, that brings cooler air further southward for this to be entirely a snow event. So by the Friday night into early Saturday time frame, it's going to be entirely a snow event for northern Illinois and Chicago, and that's when I expect you will see the most snowfall from this storm system. So definitely be prepared for that. Just because the conditions will change from a snow event into a rain event right around the Friday afternoon time frame does not mean it'll stay a rain event, because the snowfall will return in a lot of these areas in northern Illinois. And then the snowfall should move right around the Detroit area and the northern Ohio and Indiana, I'll say by the late Friday afternoon time frame into the early evening time on Friday. And the snowfall could be heavy in Detroit before it eventually does change over to rain. You might experience some snowfall in the backside, but nowhere near the magnitude as what you'll see in Chicago, as the snowfall will be relatively light on the backside of this storm system. But Detroit, you should still expect anywhere between 3 to 6 inches of snowfall from this storm system before the snow does change over to rain, so definitely be aware of that. And same goes for other areas in Michigan, southern Michigan. You guys definitely need to be prepared for anywhere between 3 to 6 inches of snowfall. But for northern Michigan, where you wouldn't experience a rain intrusion, more specifically northwestern Michigan, that's where you should expect the heavier snowfall, anywhere between probably 8 to 12 inches of snowfall. And I wouldn't be surprised in localized areas it's more than a foot, especially if you live close to the Great Lakes, where the lake effect snow enhancement could help enhance the snow totals in certain areas along the Great Lakes. So you definitely need to be aware of that as well. And look at the millibar pressure of this storm system, right around 974 millibars. If we were to take a look at how much wind you should expect from this storm system as this approaches the Midwest, you should expect wind gusts anywhere between 40 to 60 miles per hour at times, especially if you live right up along the Great Lakes. So that could cause some isolated power outages. You definitely need to be aware of that. And some isolated areas where the conditions will just be similar to a straight up blizzard. So you definitely need to be aware of that scenario in the Great Lakes area. And in terms of Wisconsin, of course, you should expect I'll say moderate snowfall. I don't expect the snowfall to be as heavy as what you'll see in northern Michigan as well as northern Illinois, but you should still see snow bands heavy enough to bring, I'll say, a large area of 3 to 6 inches of snowfall right over Wisconsin. And if we were to take a look at the snowfall forecast provided from the GFS model, by the way, the forecast is very certain for a lot of these areas. We do see a large area, the GFS model is expecting a large area of over a foot of snow. It should be a little bit less than what you see right here because, like I said, the ratio isn't always correct with every snowstorm, and this is just measuring the amount of snowfall that falls from the sky, not necessarily the amount of snowfall that accumulates on the surface. So it should be a little bit less than this, but still around the ballpark of 6 to 12 inches of snowfall if you're in the pinks. So you definitely need to be aware of that in a lot of these areas, as this will be a significant snowstorm. And same goes for the interior Northeast, especially right up along the Great Lakes of upstate New York. You definitely need to be aware of higher risk of lake effect snow, which will definitely enhance the snow totals in those areas. And then this should extend into the interior Northeast as well. But we should see a lot of these areas eventually change over into rain, which makes sense. And will definitely help limit the amount of snowfall accumulation when the storm system is all said and done by washing away a lot of that snow. But it still should be something you need to be aware about right over Vermont, New Hampshire, as well as pretty much the entirety of Maine. So definitely keep that in mind in those areas. And then when it comes to the total forecast for the more long-term future, we see that New Jersey in this second snowstorm that's expected to move in by right around the Tuesday time frame, you should expect 6 to 12 inches of snowfall. This includes southern New Jersey into the Camden area, and even northern New Jersey into Newark, into Patterson. You should expect 6 to 12 inches, around 6 to 12 inches of snowfall in this scenario. Same goes for New York City, Long Island. This would be a major snowstorm for you guys, and same goes for northern Delmar Peninsula, where Delaware and Maryland will get involved with 6 to 12 inches of snowfall. Baltimore and Washington, D.C., the entirety of eastern Maryland get involved. So if the GFS model scenario does come for fruition, you definitely need to be aware of just very heavy snowfall, even if you're right up along the coastal cities. And moving southward, what's interesting is that some portions of the southeast could get involved, like Oklahoma, a large portion of Arkansas. If the GFS model was correct, you could expect 3 to 6 inches of snowfall, and bigger cities like Memphis could get involved, as well as Nashville, and northern portions of Alabama, Georgia, and Mississippi. So if you're hoping for snowfall, this could certainly be the possibility in those areas. But again, with the European models taking having such a big disagreement with compared to what the GFS model is stating, we still need to take all this with a grain of salt. At least the second snowstorm. For this first snowstorm in the Midwest, it's highly certain at this point you're going to experience major snow out of this, so definitely take the necessary precautions in those areas. But that's it for now, guys, and I thank you guys for watching.